Good evening, Tanse, and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. The long-awaited United Nations plan to save biodiversity was signed in the early hours of December 19th. Countries committed to protecting 30% of the Earth's lands and waters by 2030. World leaders say they will collaborate with Indigenous peoples to reach this goal. Amelia Fournier has the details.
It's not your typical Montreal 3 a.m. party, but that didn't stop world leaders from celebrating. The reason? The post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework has been ratified in Montreal after years of discussions and delays due to the pandemic. This means that countries around the world have agreed on goals and targets to protect 30% of the Earth's lands and waters by 2030.
We've always been looking out for caribou.
Panelists from different nations participating in the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium were also pleased.
The big news this morning, I really feel hopeful for the first time in a really long time, and I'm really excited to see where this collaboration can go.
I'm really encouraged by the addition of Indigenous people being mentioned throughout the document.
The framework promises to protect Indigenous land rights and title and incorporate Indigenous knowledge alongside Western science.
We want to be equal with science, but we don't want to be absorbed by science. Science cannot be end all. There's other knowledge there that exists that's older than science, and that's our knowledge. So that's what we bring into this collaboration theme.
Canada is working on creating more Indigenous protected and conserved areas, something that Munson says could help protect Caribou and Bistow Lake, an important body of water on his territory in northern Alberta.
If Crown governments are serious about honoring the promises that were made when we signed the treaty back in the year 1900, this is the last chance. This is the last place to do that. If we don't get protections for Bistow Lake, we fear that our treaty promises may not be able to be kept.
The International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity, or IIFB, released a statement supporting the new framework and urged nations not to change any of the language. Representatives from the IIFB said Indigenous nations should be considered a party as themselves at the level of a nation. And David Ainsworth of the United Nations Secretariat said that is a possibility in the future.
Over the next 2 years, parties and an ad hoc technical expert group will evaluate the existing role of Indigenous peoples and local communities and traditional knowledge and evaluate whether that can be indeed expanded and move forward. And the proposal will come to COP16.
Marlene Hale of the Wet'suwet'en Nation said that the road to the agreement was a bumpy one, with some First Nations people getting their drums and regalia confiscated by security. But she was ultimately happy to have met with Indigenous women from across the world and hopes the framework lives up to its promises.
We want you to all go home on a happy note. We don't want you to go away from here with heavy hearts. We want you to go here that we've met each other and we are with each other. We're sisters worldwide.
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
Protesters set up a camp at Winnipeg's Brady Road landfill yesterday, following through on a promise to shut it down if the city didn't. The city has now closed the landfill, but protesters say they're prepared to stay until a search for the victims of an alleged serial killer are found. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
We promised them that if they did not shut it down, that we would. And we are people of our word.
Only a handful of protesters were at the encampment just outside the Brady Road landfill this morning, but they remain committed. Taylor Orpin says people have donated propane, firewood, food, and water to the camp. She calls the encampment the logical next step for them.
And for us, instead of driving out here every single day to shut it down, setting up a camp and making a home here, making a stand here, making it clear that we are not going anywhere until dumping ceases, until the search is complete, until our sisters are brought home, was just such a clear choice to us. We want.
While Orpin is not First Nation, she says she's worked with unhoused people like the victims of an alleged serial killer, Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, and Morgan Harris, for the past 12 years, and feels called to take part.
And no one has listened. And I'm learning more and more that we have to make people uncomfortable if we want a change. And that is difficult, but no other way.
Another protester, Trey Delaron, says they're prepared to man the encampment until the women are found.
When we come out here like this, we have an obligation to do and to fulfill, to be here for the people, for the MMIW family members, and those who deserve justice. Because when injustice becomes the law, resistance becomes our duty, and we have to be out here at -40, no matter how long it takes. The families will not be ignored.
Police allege 35-year-old Jeremy Skibicki killed 4 women and disposed of their bodies. Only the remains of one have been recovered. The federal and provincial governments stepped up last week, pledging support for a feasibility study on a search of the landfills. The City of Winnipeg said in a statement today that it is using contingency plans for garbage and recycling collection and will attempt to maintain services. Residents are asked to continue using their collection bins and setting them out for collection schedule. Brady Landfill and 4R Depot will be closed for in-person service as long as the closure continues. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
All right, we want to hear what you think about the 2 stories you've seen so far tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca, or you can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News, join the conversation, and see our latest stories. 34 chiefs were in Saskatoon Friday to stand against Premier Scott Moe's Saskatchewan First Act. The act passed second reading in the provincial legislature on November the 29th. The chiefs say that if it passes, the Saskatchewan First Act will undermine treaty rights to land and natural resources. A spokesperson for the province of Saskatchewan told APTN News that the act will not affect treaty rights protected under Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution. But FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron says it does, even though the treaties are supposed to supersede provincial law. Chief Cameron says the FSIN will set up blockades in the new year if Saskatchewan does not stop the act.
Political avenues, legal avenues are in place. When all else fails, we will blockade. We will protect our lands and resources as we see fit, as the many chiefs said, for future generations. To the provincial government, you must put an end to the Sask First Act. Because treaties are of international law, they trump provincial law.
A $100,000 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest or charge about an attack in February at a Coastal GasLink worksite near Houston, BC. RCMP held a press conference to announce the reward offered by the Independent Contractors and Business Association. According to RCMP, last February, around 20 people, some armed with axes, attacked security personnel and vehicles at a Coastal GasLink worksite. They re-released photos of a blockade on the Forestry Road and damage to heavy equipment and the worksite. RCMP say they have conducted interviews but have not received information to identify anyone involved in the incident. They hope the private reward helps them solve their investigation.
This is a very complicated investigation. There's been an incredible amount of work gone into this investigation. However, there are some missing pieces. And I'm hoping that this private reward today will entice those individuals to come forward with those missing pieces.
All right, we have to step aside for a short break, but still to come, a 140-year-old Chilkat blanket is returning back to a Tlingit community.
To actually have a blanket or a robe of a masterpiece that absolutely is incredible.
Welcome back to APTN National News. We turn now to an incredible story in northern BC. A 140-year-old Chilkat blanket is returning back to the Tlingit community where it once came from. Now, while the local First Nation is rejoicing over the amazing find, it's also questioning why it has to foot the bill for a cultural item that rightfully belongs to its people. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
After more than a century of separation, this Chilkat robe is finally coming home. Earlier this month, Tlingit elder and master carver Wayne Carlick unboxed the robe in Vancouver. It was a moment he'll never forget.
To actually have a blanket or a robe of a masterpiece that absolutely is incredible.
Carlick is a member of the Taku River Tlingit First Nation in Atlin, BC. Last month, he became aware of the sale of a Chilkat robe at a prestigious Canadian auction house. Not much was known about the item other than it was collected from a Tlingit community on the Taku River in the 1880s. But its rare double wolf design immediately caught Carlick's attention.
Right away, I thought maybe this is a Taku blanket.
The robe displays a signature that matches with Mary Hunt of the Drifted Ashore clan. Made out of hand-woven goat hair spun with cedar, the robe was likely worn during dancing and ceremonies. With help from the First Nation, a GoFundMe, and a generous donation from a local Atlanite, the robe was purchased at a final price of just over $46,000. But Carlick says his people shouldn't have to pay for art that rightfully belongs to them.
It hurts me to hear that we still have to do that today. How this art was taken from us, under what circumstances, and how come there's no documents about it? Because people either stole it or they took it at really cheap prices because our people were in such poverty.
Our weaving was incredible back then, and I think they treasured it too, as even though it was a stolen item.
Joanne Williams is a Taku River Tlingit elder and regalia maker. She says her grandmother told her several items were burned or taken from the community in the late 19th century when white settlers were enforcing a ban on potlatches.
I'm hoping actually that one day we will not have to pay a dime for our stolen property to be brought back to our land.
It's a raven. And so the raven head is here.
Carlick is hopeful the robe's return will send a message to Canada that Indigenous artifacts need to be returned to their communities.
I hope this helps Canada realize what's happening here and how these precious artifacts from our history comes home. They should be here.
The robe is currently housed in a Vancouver museum where it will undergo restoration work. Next year, a Tlingit celebration will be held to welcome the artifact back into the community. Carlick is thankful that such a priceless item is returning to its rightful place.
Finally, eventually, it comes back.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Atlin.
All right, it's time to step aside one final time, but when we come back, we'll show you an art sale that helps support incarcerated Indigenous women.
It connects you to your roots. It really helps you find yourself and who you are, being Indigenous.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Kenneth O'Keefe sent in this great photo of an eagle and an eagle's nest. You can see the eagle in the tree just to the left, and if you've never seen an eagle's nest before, you can see just how large they really are. Thanks so much for that, Kenneth. If you have some great photos and you want to take some over the holidays, you can send a picture or share at aptn.ca as we prepare for a new year of more photos from our viewers. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We start on the East Coast, 3 degrees in St. John's and 3 in Halifax. -3 in Snow and Cartwright and -6 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 0 degrees in Quebec City and -1 in Montreal. +1 in Toronto and 0 in North Bay. -3 in Wawa and -17 in Sioux Lookout. -22 and some flurries in Churchill and -22 in Norway House. -20 in Barons River and -21 in snow in Winnipeg. -24 in a mix of sun and cloud in Regina and -23 in Saskatoon. -25 in Buffalo Narrows and -25 in Uranium City. As we move west, -25 in Fort Chipewyan and -26 in Peace River. -23 in Edmonton and -27 in Calgary. -4 and some snow in Campbell River and clear and -27 in Quesnel. -9 and clear in Prince Rupert and -37 in Dease Lake. -40 in Beaver Creek and -45 in Dawson. -36 in clear in Norman Wells and -33 in Trout Lake. -31 in Colville Lake and -28 in Fort McPherson. -24 in Cambridge Bay and clear in -35 in Baker Lake. -32 in clear in Nagulik and a -8 in Iqaluit. Well, with the holidays just around the corner, craft sales are key in helping to support Indigenous artists. APTN's Tamara Pimentel caught up with the organizer of one sale that helps support Indigenous women behind bars.
It's an art sale organized by women to help women. Everything sold here is beaded by an Indigenous woman who is either incarcerated or recently released.
There was something that I enjoyed doing and I was really good at, so it made my time go by better, I guess, easier and faster.
For Jennifer Clark, beading helped pass the time while in the Women's Correctional Center in Headingley, Manitoba.
It connects you to your roots. It really helps you find yourself and who you are, being Indigenous.
I've learned a ton from these ladies. I've gained friends, lifelong friends.
Sandra Burling co-founded the Women Helping Women beadwork group online, where people from all over the world can buy. It started when Burling received a gift in the mail from jailed artist Trilai Anderson. Their kids were dating.
And she was just incarcerated at the time and sending me gifts, and her beadwork was really incredible. And I talked to her and asked her through her son if she wanted to sell her beadwork, and she thought that would be a really great idea. So she shared this platform with the other ladies who were in Headingley in the Women's Correctional Center.
From there, the group grew. Burling is now helping dozens sell their work well behind bars.
It just evolved, and now getting to know these women and their circumstances, and the fact that they are coming out of jail without anything, and not having housing, not having support, not having medication, it to me is just really a desperate situation.
100% of the sales go directly back to the artist.
So the money from the sale of the beadwork is really helpful for them in the sense that they can, a lot of people send money to their family. It helps buy canteen items, which all the beadwork, all the beads and the needles and the thread, it's all canteen items. And so they continue to replenish what they've sold, so the money is extremely helpful for them, as well as saving for when they get out.
Clark says it brings opportunity for a better life after incarceration.
I feel like I finally found something that I want to do with myself, with my life, and I think beading is that, because I actually enjoy doing it, and I did a lot of it while I was in there. I would bead all day, every day, and not all day, every day, but most of the time, and yeah, I'm really good at it. I enjoy it, so found something that I like to do.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, you can buy the beadwork online, and if you would like to do so, you can search Women Helping Women _beadwork, and you can send a direct message to the page on Instagram. For many Inuit living in Yellowknife, visiting family back home isn't always in the cards, especially around the holiday season. That's why one local organization has been bringing Christmas cheer to them. Our reporter Charlotte Moore Jacobs has this story.
In Kugaruk, Merry Christmas. Kalograk, Merry Christmas. Cambridge Bay, Kogluktuk.
'Twas a week before Christmas when all through Yellowknife, Inuit Tugutagatikik hold a gathering that's larger than life. The babies are nestled snug in the Amounties, while folks feast on potluck goods and Christmas candies.
I would like to say a Merry Christmas to my 2 boys in Johaven. I'm here in Yellowknife to wait for my granddaughter to be born. And to my other half in Goose Lake, Merry Christmas from me and Protestors.
The games are aplenty and people bustle about after 2 long years when a pandemic put the event on timeout.
It's going really good. It's so fun. It's nice to be all together again after the pandemic.
Charlie and his daughter Jamie Kudlak spend months organizing, tiring work, but the smiles make it so energizing.
You know, they don't get to see it very much because of the location they're in and how hard it is to get out back to their home. And the reward is just seeing people having a good time, enjoying themselves, and it's like they're feeling like they're at home for one night.
Since 2018, the nonprofit's been growing with dreams of expanding and projects ongoing.
The food security and getting country food from the northern communities, from the hunters up there, to provide us with some country food, and we divvy it up and distribute it to the local population here.
While the high cost of airfare makes it hard to go home, it's a nice alternative, so there's no reason to roam.
All our friends that we haven't seen for years. We've been here 20 years and it's been a long time. But we think about people from back home all the time, so they're in my heart.
Well wishes are given as the night comes to close with gratitude in their hearts for this Yellowknife Inuit family they've chose.
It's really nice to see, and I like all the food too. I'm taking some home, and please draw my ticket.
Charlotte Moore Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Well, what a wonderful story to end our show on. That's all we have for you on this Monday edition of APTN National News. We leave you tonight with more fantastic Christmas carols, this time sung by Lena Daniels. For all of us here, I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us, Jimmy Gwitch. Have a great night and stay safe out there.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list, he's checking it twice, he's gonna find out